Have you ever pondered the immense impact colonialism has had on the world we live in today? Colonialism, a significant historical phenomenon, originated when European powers began to explore and conquer vast territories across Africa and Asia. Driven by economic ambitions, political competition, and a sense of cultural superiority, these powers embarked on voyages of discovery, subjugation, and exploitation. In Africa and Asia, these colonial endeavors profoundly altered indigenous societies and economies. Traditional cultures were disrupted, local economies were restructured for European benefit, and social hierarchies were upended. The ripple effects of these changes are still visible today, in the form of cultural diffusion, economic disparities, and political challenges. The colonial era was not just a period of European domination, but also a time when the seeds of resistance were sown. Indigenous peoples, though subjugated, were not passive recipients of colonial rule. They began to challenge and resist their oppressors, laying the groundwork for the birth of resistance and independence movements. Colonialism, though a dark chapter in human history, laid the groundwork for the birth of resistance and independence movements. As the saying goes, oppression breeds resistance. This sentiment rang true in the hearts of many in Africa and Asia during the era of colonial rule. As European powers exerted their control, a powerful counterforce began to take shape: the stirrings of independence. In the face of colonization, nationalism and anti-colonial movements emerged, challenging the status quo and advocating for self-determination. These movements were led by brave individuals who dared to stand against the might of colonial powers. In India, the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League, led by influential figures like Mahatma Gandhi and Muhammad Ali Jinnah, became the voice of the people. In Africa, movements and leaders like the Mau Mau Rebellion in Kenya and Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana marked the beginning of a long struggle for freedom. These movements were the first steps towards independence, but the journey was far from smooth. In the midst of oppression, one man stood tall to champion the cause of independence through non-violence. This man was none other than Mahatma Gandhi, a name synonymous with peaceful resistance and unwavering resilience. Gandhi's leadership during the Indian independence movement was a beacon of hope for millions. His strategies, grounded in the principles of ahimsa, or non-violence, and satyagraha, which means holding on to truth, were revolutionary. Gandhi believed in the power of civil disobedience, boycotts, and mass protests as tools to challenge the might of the British Empire. He led numerous non-violent campaigns, from the Salt March to the Quit India movement, proving that it was possible to fight oppression without resorting to violence. These actions not only rattled the colonial administration, but also united the diverse Indian population under a common cause: the pursuit of freedom. Gandhi's philosophy of non-violence became a beacon of hope, not just for India but for oppressed nations worldwide. Independence often comes at a price, and for India it was partition. This momentous event in 1947 led to the creation of two separate nations, India and Pakistan, after centuries of British rule. But what led to this divide? It was a potent cocktail of religious and political tensions. The predominantly Hindu India and Muslim Pakistan found themselves at odds, with leaders unable to reconcile their differences. The partition was not a peaceful transition. It triggered one of the largest mass migrations in human history, as millions moved across the newly drawn borders, seeking safety among their religious kin. This mass exodus was accompanied by horrific violence, as communal tensions boiled over, leading to the loss of countless lives. This traumatic period in history underscores the complexities of independence. It's not just about breaking free from colonial rule, but also about navigating the internal divisions within a society. The partition of India serves as a stark reminder that the path to independence is fraught with challenges. Africa, a continent rich in culture and resources, bore the brunt of colonialism, but also produced some of the most inspiring independence movements. From the west to the east, the north to the south, nations across Africa began to rise, shaking off the shackles of foreign rule. Let's start with Ghana, the first sub-Saharan nation to gain independence in 1957, a beacon of hope for other African nations. Then there's Kenya, whose struggle for self-rule was marked by the Mau Mau uprising, a powerful testament to the resilience of the Kenyan people. In North Africa, Algeria's bloody and protracted war of independence against France led to its freedom in 1962. And finally, we have Zimbabwe, which only saw the end of white minority rule in 1980, a stark reminder of the long-lasting effects of colonialism. These nations, each with their unique journey, marked the end of colonial rule in Africa. In the annals of decolonization, the Algerian War of Independence stands out as a watershed moment. From 1954 to 1962, Algeria was embroiled in a fierce struggle for liberation from French colonial rule. At the crux of this struggle was the National Liberation Front, or FLN, a political and military organization determined to end French occupation. The FLN employed guerrilla warfare, harnessing the power of the people to resist the might of the French military. On the other side of the battle lines, France grappled with the realities of a changing world. As the tide of decolonization swept across Africa and Asia, the French government was forced to confront its diminishing global influence. The war was brutal, marked by atrocities on both sides. Yet it was a fight that Algeria was willing to endure, a testament to the nation's unyielding desire for sovereignty. The Algerian War of Independence was a stark testament to the lengths nations would go to secure their freedom. In the fight for independence, unity was the secret weapon. Born out of the need to combat colonialism, ideologies of Pan-Africanism and Pan-Asianism emerged, fostering unity and solidarity among African and Asian nations. These ideologies advocated for a shared identity, a collective voice, and a unified front against colonial rule. Pan-Africanism, a belief in the shared experience and destiny of all African people, regardless of national boundaries, played a pivotal role in mobilizing resistance against colonial rule. Similarly, Pan-Asianism, rooted in the shared history and culture of Asian nations, called for unity and cooperation in the struggle for independence. These movements transcended national borders and brought together diverse groups in a shared struggle for freedom and self-determination. They were not just ideologies, but powerful tools of resistance and liberation. These ideologies promoted a collective fight for independence, further strengthening the resolve of these nations. World wars and global politics played a significant role in shaping the decolonization process. World War II, for instance, left many European powers economically and militarily weakened, diminishing their ability to maintain control over their colonial territories. This created a power vacuum, providing an opportunity for nationalist movements in Africa and Asia to gain momentum. Simultaneously, the emergence of the Cold War introduced a new dimension to the decolonization process. The United States and the Soviet Union, the two superpowers, competed for influence over the newly independent nations. They often supported nationalist movements, not necessarily out of sympathy for their cause, but as a strategy in their global power game. Decolonization, thus, was not merely a local or regional phenomenon, it was intertwined with global political trends and events. It was a process influenced by the shifting balance of power on the world stage. These global events inadvertently accelerated the march towards independence. Achieving independence was only the beginning of a new set of challenges. The joy of liberation was quickly replaced by the reality of nationhood, a journey fraught with difficulties. The scars of colonial rule ran deep, leaving behind a legacy of economic underdevelopment, political instability, and social divisions. Ethnic diversity, once celebrated, now became a source of tension as communities grappled with the question of national identity. How does a nation unite its people when they speak different languages, practice different religions, and hold different cultural beliefs? Economic development was another hurdle. Colonial powers had exploited the resources of these nations for their own benefit, leaving behind economies that were ill-equipped for self-sustenance. Political instability, too, was a common challenge. The power vacuum left by departing colonial rulers often led to power struggles, military coups, and in some cases, violent conflicts. These challenges highlight the complexities of nation-building post-colonialism. The fight for independence is a significant part of a nation's identity. It's in these epic struggles that nations find their character, their spirit, and their resilience. The decolonization and independence movements across Africa and Asia were no exception. They were the crucibles in which nations were forged, heroes were born, and histories were written. Today, we remember these movements not just as footnotes in history, but as vibrant and living legacies that continue to shape our world. From the bustling streets of Mumbai to the vibrant colors of Accra, from the bustling markets of Algiers to the tranquil temples of Hanoi, the echoes of these struggles can still be felt. These struggles are commemorated in monuments, celebrated in holidays, and remembered in the stories passed from generation to generation. They serve as reminders of the sacrifices made, the battles fought, and the victories won in the pursuit of freedom. As we remember these movements, we continue the ongoing quest for social justice, equality, and self-determination.